Thank you, Gautam. It's my proud privilege to be here in this August gathering, surrounded by experts from various marketing arms of, as we know them, the advertising community, the media community, and I don't know whether I can tell you anything new about status quo, because that's what I guess you guys are always battling. What I'll talk about is my little experience heading the foods business of ITC, where we've had our shares of challenging status quo. It is not that we decided to enter the business to challenge status quo, but if you happen to be a late starter in any business or you get into a business late, then this is something which invariably comes along as one of the challenges. Because when you enter the business arena in a new category, there are already several and multiple players who are there, and to create a little space for yourself, you need to create a little differentiation. And if you don't do that, you may still get a market share, but it will never be a profitable market share. So my own experience has shown that it is only when you challenge a status quo, create a little bit of a disruption, can you reach a level where you can claim that you can competitively make a surplus. So from that point of view, this becomes a very relevant discussion. Having said that, let's look at the leader's advantage. Fundamentally, they have a huge backing of a critical mass. I think that's something we must remember of a leader in any category. Many of them have accumulated over years, and in newer industry has been accumulated over a decade or maybe 5 years. So when you're battling a leader, remember the leader has a huge mind share, a huge consumer space, a huge scale, and a huge operation going, which you are going to battle. And also the fact that very often we assume they have a huge amount of consumer insight. They've seen it all. So when you're challenging a leader, that's the kind of mind space or mindset a challenger comes up with. Most of the leaders, especially in food business, I have encountered have become habits in consumers' life. So in biscuits, if you have a parlay and you're traveling Muzaffarabad in UP or Raebareli or somewhere outskirts of Bhopal, consumers have seen that particular brand all their lives. Their fathers have seen it, probably their grandfathers have seen it, and it's amazing when you do a blind test to a villager who can barely read, he can spot it from a mile. So that's the kind of power that a brand which is already there has. So if anybody is thinking of challenging, say, a company like Parle in glucose, you may get a market share, but you'll be nowhere like getting a profit share of that business. Okay. So because it's become so much a part of consumers' life and there is so much recognition with it and so much preference for it that it becomes difficult to actually counter that. But one issue with most leaders have is that they are a little change averse, okay, because they are going a certain way, there is a momentum with their growth, there's an organization supporting that growth, and to change courses for a leader is always very difficult. You can change courses only when you see a crisis or something else is emerging. So this is I think a significant advantage which a challenger has, is the leader generally will give you or will blink a little, will give you that ounce of time or that space and that little mistake which can help you to creep in, because they're not really challenging their own conventional wisdom. Okay, so, and basically they are convention driven. They have formulated the SOPs, standard operating procedures for a particular category over years, and they believe that's the only way it works. So therefore, although the challenger has to work hard and harder to fight several battles simultaneously of scale, of consumer, of insight, but we must remember that there is an advantage which a challenger has. A, he's got a challenge. He's got the advantage of coming up with something new, which a leader may not have thought through or thought of. Point number 2, he has lesser inertia to manage than a leader has. Point number 3, if he is bent of hurting the leader, then the leader would probably end up, if you fight an unequal battle, would end up getting a little more hurt than a challenger does. So there are certain advantages which a challenger has. Having said that, I think one of the very important contexts I must tell you in the Indian industry is the fact that when we are talking about leaders and challengers is still in a very, very relative format because the marketplace has not evolved. Okay, you're still talking about challenging a leader in a category which is growing at 15% an annum, or 20% per annum, or 25% per annum, or at least 10% per annum. When a leader is seeing growth, despite slipping market share, my own experience is that they take it, erosion in market shares a lot less easier than were the market to be absolutely static and stable. Okay, so this whole urge of at least these 5-6 years, which have seen rapid growth, and we hope this will transform over the next few years, because I personally feel that at least in my category, all the categories which are represented in packaged foods would probably quadruple in over the next 10 years in terms of their size, scale, even at an inflation neutral level, about 3 to 4 times they will grow in the next 10 years. The fact remains that when you are challenging a leader in such an industry, it is easier than, say, challenging a leader where the growth rate is 2%, 0%, or probably negative. Okay, so while we may talk about challenging in a major manner and we may make a huge issue out of it, it's still comparatively easier in India to do it than it would have been in a much more mature marketplace. And when I talk to colleagues across the world and see what different challenges and intensity of rivalry they face, I do believe, although it's not written anywhere, there are no books about it, there's no publication about it, I do believe that the intensity of rivalry in India is not yet evolved, or maybe it's 3 years away or 4 years away. It's not yet evolved to a level at which we see intensity elsewhere. So there is still a hope. Okay. So as I said, challenges, apart from this hope of growth, are disruption driven. They aim to be number ones. They ask why not. And certainly challenges to be successful need to be change catalysts. By nature, if you want to be a good challenger, you need to be restless and really operate in the courage zone, because very often you're going against conventional wisdom, conventional knowledge. And if you, in a very textbookish manner, approach it, you won't, within your organization, also get too much support, because people will feel your ideas are either zany or they are not something which have been tested. That's why you're challenging, because your ideas are not tested. And will it work, will it not work, will be a whole lot of wasted money. But if you have the courage of conviction and the insight to back you, it is always worth it being a challenger. And over the next few slides, I'll show you what are the various ways we and others have challenged and created disruption in marketplace. Now, mature markets I wouldn't like to call any market mature, as I've just explained, but at least markets which have been in existence for many years. Okay, so fundamentally, one of the things which we have always done, and and many people do, is that when we are looking at a challenger who's a leader who's huge, is can you redefine the category and create a parallel and an exciting world? Okay, why do you have to look into segmentation or the benefits the way the leader has looked? Can we look at it differently? And we have seen a classic case of Nokia versus Micromax in this country. Of course, not being from that industry, it's not fair for me to dwell too deep into it, but the fact remains that in one case, and you've seen really how disruptive that kind of competition can be, because it's a feature-rich competition coupled with a price discount. So it's absolutely the heightened sense of aggressive competition in a field where there's a global leader talking and facing a local challenger. And fundamentally on the fact of absolute features and price. And they have both demonstrably superior to to the class of people that are aimed to be served, which is really a lower middle class, urban or a rural consumer. So if you see Nokia comes up with a cell phone for rural consumers which has a torch, this guy comes up with a rural phone which has a touch screen. Not a torch, it's got a touch screen. If Nokia has a telephone which never looked about how frequently you need to charge, they come up with define a rural category where you need to charge a cell phone once in 10 days because of rural electrification issues, etc. It makes a lot more sense. Therefore, in a sense, they have really redefined what SECB kind of, in the old days, the convention to be used, what an SECB consumer can really look forward to as an experience in this digital world. So by redefining that, they've been able to claim a certain share and create a market disruption at the top. I've just talked about something which I'm a little more familiar with. As I said, Parle is the hallmark in glucose and has always been known so. Until 4 years back, or even 2 years back, glucose in the biscuit space formed 55% of the entire biscuit industry. Incidentally, biscuit is the largest FMCG category in this country. And consumer spends are of the order of 15,000 crores. But yet, the category is growing at about 15% per annum. So it's a large category with a healthy growth rate, a large penetration, and now, as things are turning out to be, growth predicated on premiumization, which is a huge trend which you see across consumer segments. We've seen it in biscuits. Now, one of the reasons why biscuits was supposed to be, glucose was supposed to be the last word in it is that first it had it was considered fairly tasty and, it had a heritage of 90 years and was sold at price points of 3 rupees, 4 rupees, 5 rupees, in UP even at 2 rupees, whereas the nearest cookie was at a price point of 10 rupees, 11 rupees, 12 rupees. So there was a huge gulf seen between the two markets. And when you really looked at the consumer inside, it was conventionally believed that a biscuit, a glucose biscuit, fundamentally when you really inquired from consumers, you realized that most of the time he ate this biscuit as a light hunger satisfier. Okay, and the insight also revealed there was an element of boredom in this light hunger satisfaction, because 24/7, 365 a year for several years, you just had to keep eating the same thing, that it had become a staple, and there was a consumer who was ripe for change. Now, cookie was really being positioned as a offering to a guest or to a privileged person, also because the price point was high. So when somebody comes home in a urban or a semi-urban or a rural setting, he's offered cookies and not glucose. Glucose was seen as a everyday biscuit. But Sunfeast, for one, and several other companies, so I won't only claim credit, one was able to see that the disruption is possible in this market, where the cookie can be priced at 5 rupees, a little smaller pack, with some of the some of the features which add to cost can be somewhat downgraded, okay, without really altering the experience of a cookie. Okay, so if it was butter, you could replace a lot of that butter with say a butter flavor, but it would give you the same thing, and it would be possible to file for instance, a very competitive pack at 5 rupees to fight for against a glucose price of 3 and 4. And when this was done in a large way, it would be also, characterized as a light hunger satisfier with an enhanced taste, enhanced appeal, with either a cashew or a butter offering. So when this was done, the amazing thing is that a market category which led for 95 years collapsed in 2 years. And today, if you see the Indian market, cookies are about 10% larger than glucose. So glucose, which had 54% of the market, have come down to 30. Cookies, which had something like 5 or 7 or 10 or 12% of the market, have gone up to 34, 35. And this transformation has taken place. Of course, I must tell you that once Parle saw the thing, they also got into the bandwagon and got into the bandwagon very well, because they were able to leverage many of their strengths. But fundamentally, it was just questioning this wisdom which said for 90 years that you cannot change this habit with an Indian consumer. This is a glucose biscuit is the only biscuit which is a light hunger satisfier, which is affordable and which a person is used to 90 years. This is the taste he's gotten used to. Nothing else can come in this way. This is how the industry will continue. If you want to be in this industry, please see that as a reality.